This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
We're back with another episode of the Big Fish Cares Podcast. I got a really, really cool guest today. I think you guys are going to get a lot of value out of this. My buddy Graham Desert. Or is it dessert or desert or dessert? Like, how do you want to say it, Graham?
I get that question all the time. And it is desert. It's pronounced desert, spelled dessert. But you know what, man? You can call me Graham Dessert. It's cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. It sounds good.
Own the double S.
So let's get right into it because you have a fascinating story. You have started multiple businesses. You went through a big bankruptcy that you were very vulnerable about. You've done the crazy Murph challenge, like 365 days in a row. I want to dig into that a little bit. I want to dig into this new leadership course that you have coming out. And I saw that on Facebook the other day. I want to hear about that. But first, let me get to know you a little bit because I got to chat with you at this ranch down in Texas. We were there with Ryan Gross, Sales Transformation Group. We got the bond with you for a couple of days, and I got mostly. And back then, it was like we were all talking about the Murph, right? It was all about the Murph. Everything was about the Murph. A little bit about roofing, but no, roofers get bored with other roofers, so it's like we got to find something else funny to talk about. But I want to know about you, the person. Where'd you come from? How'd you grow up? What was your family like growing up? Tell us a little bit about you.
Awesome. Well, hey, first off, I'm just really honored to be here. And it's really good to see you, talk to you again. It was like a little over a year ago, man. We were down at that ranch in Texas, which, by the way, was an amazing place. I would love to go back again. I actually marked that down as a place to go back. But one thing that I really like about you is, dude, your personality. Like, you're just so full of life. You're this bright light everywhere you go. So I just wanted to honor you with that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, keep that up, bro.
I'm trying, man.
But as far as my, how I grew up and, where I'm from, I grew up in a very large military family. My father was in the military, 10 kids, 5 girls, 5 boys. Yeah, I know. People freak out about that.
Wow.
Like, what?
Just the 12 of us.
Yeah, just the 12 of us. Yep. My mom had 10 children in 14 years. So my
Where are you at in
like
the hierarchy of all that?
Number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah.
So you're right in the middle.
Right in the middle, man. So we grew up mainly on the East Coast. We'd move every 2 or 3 years. I lived in New York. I lived in Washington, D.C., Savannah, Georgia area, Kansas City. Was born in Colorado Springs. And so I had a great childhood. Loved growing up, loved my parents. They did an amazing job. My dad was an amazing father. Just a good man. They're still here. Just want to give honor to my folks. But
what's that like growing up in the military? Like with 10 people, like do they have to like get you your whole compound or what?
If we live, I guess when you're in the military, you either live on base or you don't. And if you don't live on base, you get like a housing stipend or a housing allowance. And so half the time we lived on base and half the time we didn't. It just kind of depended if they had quarters big enough for us,
Yeah, how many bedrooms? I mean, like how many kids in a bedroom? I mean...
Dude, when there was one time where we lived in a 3-bedroom apartment and it was like all the boys in one room, all the girls in one room, and mom and dad and the baby in the other. So it was like, bunk beds, eight kids and then 1 baby. Yeah. So 4 boys in one room, 4 girls in the other. And then, yeah.
Did you guys make your bed did you guys have to make your bed every morning, like military style?
If I remember right, I believe so. Yeah. They were like, growing up, my dad was pretty strict on that. My mom was pretty strict on it. So discipline and routine was like something that I grew up with. I would say the number one thing that I would say was instilled in me, the learning experience that I had that I think impacted me the most was I was 8 or 9 years old and I started delivering newspapers with my brothers. It was the Washington Post. This is in Washington, D.C. We would wake up at, I think it was like 4:30 every morning, if I remember right, because I remember sending a text to my dad not too long ago just saying, hey, thank you for making me deliver these newspapers. That like literally instilled work ethic into my life, because we, for 2 years, would wake up at 4:30, and he told me it was 4:30 because I was like, oh, thanks for making me wake up at 5:30. He's like, actually, it was 4:30. I'm like, oh, dang. So we would wake up at 4:30 every morning, rain or shine, no matter what the weather was, and we would go outside, and we literally would hand deliver these newspapers, open up people's doors. If the weather was terrible, we would open up the doors and put them in. If the weather was good, we'd place it on the front doorstep. I remember my dad would watch us and make sure that we were doing a good job. And there was one time where I remember it only had to happen once or twice, but there was one time where it was like I did an entire street and I was just like, F it, man, I'm just going to chuck these newspapers. I don't really care. I just want to get done.
Like in the video game Paperboy. Remember?
Oh, dude.
Remember Paperboy? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was like, bro, I just want to get done. I want to get home. I want to eat cereal, whatever. And so he watched me, and when I got back to the van, he's like, hey, we need to go back. You need to actually put those newspapers on the doorstep. How you do anything is how you do everything. And so I learned that at a very young age. And so how that translated into business, or how that translated into work ethic down the road is, when you actually take care of people, like they'll tip you, they'll take care of you, it's just the right thing to do, especially for old people. You have these old, and he would explain that to me. He's like, hey, listen, these old people, like they have to wake up, open up the door, walk down this icy sidewalk to get their newspaper, or they have to go through the bushes to find some wet newspaper because it was raining out and you were too lazy. Like that, the typical newspaper boy is just chucking it. You don't want to be typical. You're better than typical. You are like the best of the best. That's how you want to operate. So it's a spirit of excellence. So a spirit of excellence was instilled in me at a very, very young age. And so, I every chance I get, or every time I think about it, I honor my dad and I send him a message, or I give him a phone call and say, hey, thanks. And I honor my parents for that experience, because that really helped me as a business owner. Years later, owning a business and coaching employees on doing the right thing and doing a task to the best of your ability and explaining why it's important. And how, like, if you don't do things to the best of your ability, you do things like 70% or 50% or 95%, it actually affects everybody else's ability to do their job. It can affect somebody else's day. And
absolutely.
That's not and even when it comes time to like delivering, like, doing a roof job, like you want to do the best job that you possibly can, because, ultimately it comes down to customer experience and your reputation.
When you talk about parents, like that's one of the things like that my mom taught me. She doesn't know anything about, business really. She doesn't know anything about roofing, of course. Like she doesn't, sales is not up her alley. Marketing is not up her alley. Mm-hmm. But the two things I always tell everybody that my mother taught me was to show up on time and do what you say you're going to do. And
I love that.
And when you said do the right thing is actually one of our core values at Big Fish Contracting. The other one's exceed expectations, serve others, and then be enthusiastic. And I feel like those embody me personally to start. And then, obviously, every time I was making hires and stuff like that, I didn't really have core values when I first did it, but I kind of always wanted the people around me that were kind of like me. And now that we have the core values, you can really kind of hire around those things, man. And I know they're important to you. I was looking through some of the notes before we got on here today, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But growing up with some older brothers, I mean, what was that like, scrapping and fighting? I mean, I'm sure they weren't easy on you, right?
Oh man. So I had two older brothers. One, Ross, he's, how much older is he than me? 6 years, I think. Yeah. So old enough to like 6 or 7 years old enough to just, give you a hard time,
Yeah.
but also old enough to, look up to and teach you a few things, So
Yeah. I could see that.
And then my older brother, Brooke, who's about a year and a half older than me or so, we had the same friends growing up. We were always together, dude. We were always roommates. Like, we were roommates growing up, and we were roommates in high school. We were roommates in college, actually. We went to the same school. We were roommates for a while out of college, Like, we were roommates for a long time. We had the same jobs we worked at the same places. We had the same circle of friends. We were like, I wouldn't say inseparable, but we were usually together.
What's life like now with a big family like that with 12 of you? Like, how often do all of you get back together?
Great question. So I would say we do reunions maybe once every 5 years. We did a reunion in 2015. And I think we did a reunion, when was that? 2017, I think we did one. But we're doing one next year. The message was sent out like, you guys, no excuses. It's paid for. Like, everybody get together, make the plans now. If you're not there, you're disowned type of a thing. Yeah. So I would say, we're fairly close. Since I've moved, and quite frankly, in the last year, I've gone through a lot personally, and I haven't been as active or I haven't been back to Kansas City in over a year now. So
is that where like home base is for your parents?
Yeah, that's home base for my parents. It's home base for most of my siblings. I have a sister that lives here in Southern California where I live. I see her. I actually don't see her a lot. I should see her more. But I actually don't see her.
Traffic's tough in California, man. Like,
she lives like 7 miles that way, but it'll take 35 minutes to get there.
Where are you in San Diego?
Carlsbad, which is just
Carlsbad.
It's like 45 minutes north, same county.
I got a cousin, Lisa Nelson. If you're listening, she's in Vista.
Okay,
that's not too far. And,
no, dude, that's like right there.
Her husband has a chiropractor business or something like that. Or no, he's a nutritionist. I'm sorry, nutritionist in maybe Encinitas.
Okay.
Or something like that. But anyway, so tell me about after you flew the coop, after you got out of the house, right? What you started, I know you started business. You started businesses young. How did you get in? How did you start a business so young? And tell us about that business journey a little bit.
Well, I grew up in the trades. I grew up on the ladder. So I was a painter, a house painter growing up. I worked for my older brother. My older brother was the boss. And so he owned his own painting company for years through college. And so I worked for him throughout high school and college, making money in the summers, and then did that for 5 years. And after about 5 years, you're just kind of like, well, man, I know how to do this. I know what he's charging. I know what a gallon of paint costs. I know what I'm getting paid. I know how long it takes to paint a house. Dude, I want to start my own painting company.
You're doing the math. It wasn't working.
I started doing the math, and I was like, I have no idea. I have no business experience, no idea what I'm doing. But I'm going to do it. So I went off and I found houses that need to be painted, and it's really easy. You just drive down the street and you look at them and you're like, yeah, that looks terrible. That looks terrible. I'm going to go talk to them. So I would go talk to people. And that's how I got business. That's how I started. I made enough money the first year to pay my bills, basically. At that point, my first child was born. I was a dad at a very young age, at the age of 20. So I had some motivation. I had a why. There was no go out and make money for a beer or whatever. This was
you grew up quick.
I grew up quick. I was going out to start a business with my future in mind, with my family in mind. Didn't mess around. So after that first year, I looked at them like, you know what, man, I wonder what I could do if I had like 8 employees or 8 painters. I see these trucks driving around and these companies and all that kind of stuff. I wonder if, what it would take to do that. So I got in touch with my brother and I said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What should I do? And he's like, hey, you should go work and start a franchise with this company. And I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. So at 22 years old, I started a franchise and was a top 25 franchise owner at the age of 22. At the age of 23, I was the number 1 in the country we scaled because I was like, whoa, if I could do this with, 12 employees or 15 employees, what could I do with like 30 or 40? Like, let's just keep scaling. Let's just,
why not make it 1,000?
Why not? Yeah. I was like, man, let's just, but I wasn't to 1,000 yet, but I was like, man, what's the next level? I want to keep on growing. So
tell me about the franchise thing. Hold on. So you bought into a franchise, or like, how does that work? Like you didn't start a franchise by yourself, did you?
Well, it's college painting franchise.
So college, yeah. So like, how did that work? Did you have to have money to like start, like get in, or like they just? No,
you don't have to have money to get started. It's a higher franchise fee. So it's like the average franchise fee, like I would say the painting franchise fee is like 5 to 8% or something like that. College pro, I think at that time was 18.
So you're a college pro. So you're with all those BTA guys. Didn't Danny Kerr come from college pro?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Man, what a small world.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Definitely a small world. I remember, I was like, man, I know you. This was like 15 years ago. I know you. Yeah.
That's wild. So like, what was that journey like? I mean, did you like, they're like, here's, did they have all the processes figured out? Like, was it like a legit, it was like a legit franchise. They said, do this.
They had all the processes in place. They had corporate employees and corporate managers that taught you everything, that trained you on how to do everything. So I learned at a young age, production. I learned sales. I learned financials. I learned marketing. I learned, all systems and processes, simple systems and processes, nothing complicated. And so, I think our business was like $300,000 or $400,000 when I was 23 years old. House painting with the average job size of $2,500. And so we produced $300,000 or $400,000 in about 4 months, at the age of 23. And I had over 30 employees. So it was quite the production, and I was pretty busy, and
that's a lot of people for 400,000, isn't it? Maybe. I guess it's all labor intensive. Painting's all labor intensive, right? There's not much material, right?
Yeah, and you're producing that in 4 months. So it's equivalent to a $1.6 million business.
Okay. I got a buddy that's in the painting business. I don't really understand it because I don't I'm thinking like, I don't know.
It's the same thing as roofing. It's the exact same thing as roofing. It's just 5 times less the job size. And it takes 3 times as long to...
Sounds terrible.
Yeah, it takes 3 times as long to do the job. There's less liability. But
there is less liability and less safety concerns.
Yeah, but it's still dangerous because you're working with ladders.
That's true.
Ladder safety, the number of accidents, actually, I think the number of accidents is higher.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, if I remember right, dude, we had more accidents in painting.
Well, maybe that's because, you're right, because you're working off ladders a lot. So on roofs, you're actually, once you get on the roof, it's pretty safe. Like once you're on the roof, it's
sprained ankles, cuts, stuff like that.
Little stuff like that. So what was like how much like did you get to take home? Like when you were like 23 years old, like what was your wow, mom, I'm rich. Like, did you ever have one of those years?
Yeah, that was the first year.
Yeah, it's always the first year.
Yeah, that was the first year. The second year is like our overhead was like way too high, and I didn't really manage the money very well. And
did you have friends that were probably in college at the time, right? You probably didn't even go to college, right?
Well, no, I went to college.
Oh, did you go to college?
Yeah, I played college football. So what I did was I hired the football team. Basically, I mean, it was. I'm like, you would be a good foreman. You're a good foreman. You're a good foreman. And I just knew the work ethic, because I knew these guys, so that's what I looked for was work ethic. I want these guys to come in and work and not be lazy. And so
where'd you play college football?
University of St. Mary. I was a captain on the team too. So I had, some leverage, with the guys.
Would you play cornerback?
I was a linebacker. And,
were you really?
Yeah, strong safety. Yeah. Probably the shortest linebacker in like all time.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, man, you got to definitely play in the defensive backfield. I'm thinking that's the only spot for you. I met you in person. I was like,
yeah. Well, I played semi-pro in 2015, so 7 years ago. I played a year semi-pro, and that's where I played. I played corner, and quite frankly, like after playing that season, I was like, dude, I would have been a better corner. I was actually faster and better at the age of 35 than I was at the age of 22 and 23.
How long did you do the franchise thing? Like for the
just 2 years. 2 years.
Is that because you got smart enough to realize that like the fee was like just like killing you? You could do it your own. You could do it yourself.
It was always a matter of like, man, I wonder what's next. What can I do? If I can do this with 30 people, what can I do with like 100? What does it take to run a multi-million-dollar business? So that's when I went to College Pro Corporate and was like, hey, listen, I want to work for you guys, and I want to learn more. What can I learn? What can you teach me? Like, I spent my 20s just being a sponge, trying to increase my network, meet as many people as possible, learn as much as possible. Money was a thing, but it was more about like becoming the person that it would take to become a millionaire. That's what was on my mind.
And you started having, obviously, I don't know how many, I know you have a few kids now, but like how many kids back then, like were kids starting to like,
oh, kids were popping out, dude.
So like money, like was all going to the wife and the kids, and like,
dude, we were scraping it, dude. We were so I think my salary at the time was, I think I was making like maybe $50,000, and we had three kids.
And this were you in California?
I was in Kansas City at the time.
Kansas City, all right. So not quite as bad as California. So
not quite as bad.
At least you could survive.
Yeah, we were making it. We were paying. And we actually did a good job of putting together financial forecasts and paying off debt and stuff like that. So we were doing a really great job with that. Tell me about your wife. Where'd you guys meet? We actually met in high school.
Oh wow, high school sweethearts.
Yeah. Dude, I was in high school choir because that's where all the beautiful chicks were. I was like, man, I just want to be in choir to, meet some girls. So that's where I met my wife. And we were more friends than anything. We became really good friends. We had the same circle of buddies. And so we hung out a lot. Outside of high school, like she was a year older than I was. So she graduated first. So she went to college, and then I went to college, and we kind of like went separate ways. And, she actually moved out here. She went to San Diego State, and she went here for a couple of years and moved back. And when she moved back, we reconnected, and, it was just one of those moments where I was like, finally, okay, cool. And from that one moment of reconnecting, it was like we've stayed together. So been together awesome. For. I mean, that's a pretty cool story in and of itself. I'm sure.
Especially with all the ups and downs that you've been along the ride. And what does she pretty much? What is her role in the family? Does she take care of the family? Does she work? Like, does she like?
Well, right now she's a stay-at-home mom. She homeschools the kids. With the pandemic and all that stuff going on, how weird the things were with the public schools, we were just like, forget it. We pulled our kids out, started homeschooling 2 years ago. And then right now she's a vocal director for a theater company.
That's cool.
Which is awesome.
Has she always been super supportive of all these business ideas and all this, like, gram testosterone, go out and light the world on fire?
Totally.
Yeah, that's cool, 100%. Man.
Yeah, she's been real supportive, even through our down years. This last year.
Yeah, now I've been watching that journey. So tell me, how'd you get into roofing? So like, how'd you go from painting to roofing? That's got to be a cool story.
Well, so I was working with College Pro Corporate. They gave me a division of a company of the business. I basically grew it from 6 employees to 150 in like 6 to 7 months. So I learned how to like scale a business very quickly and recruit and build leaders at a very, very young age. I was 26.
I mean, it takes me like 6 months to even like hire like 3 people. Like how do you hire 100 people in 6 months and then actually,
you got to teach people how to recruit.
Not just to recruit and hire, but then how do you make them leaders then? Like at the same time, like that's 2 different skill sets.
Yeah. No, you hire leaders and then you teach them how to recruit. Yeah. That's what I did.
Okay, give me Graham's 3-step process to hire a leader.
Well, it's like I mean, number one, I started off like, hey, I'm looking for leaders. This is what I'm doing. And I want you to hire and lead your own team. So that's what I started with.
And what were you finding? I mean, like where were these people coming from? Like what different kind of industries, what kind of roles were they coming from? Like what was their ages? Like,
these were all the college campuses. So what I would do, dude, is,
so they weren't leaders yet.
They weren't even leaders yet.
They were wannabe leaders.
They were wannabe leaders, and I developed them into leaders.
Okay.
Yeah. So I interviewed based off of what I was looking for. So I was looking for people that were goal-oriented. I was looking for tenacity. I was looking for, people's fundamental ability, which is, how do you handle stress and pressure and things like that? How do you handle conflict?
How do you ask a college kid how they handle stress and conflict? Like what? They don't have. They ran out of beer. They ran out of beer money and like. That's
oh
the
no,
conflict?
dude! Like you can tell. Like how do they respond to like school? College students actually are under a lot of pressure and stress, especially with. It depends on what's on their plate. Like, are you working full time? What kind of clubs and social events are you in? Especially if like you're in fraternities. I mean, there's a lot of activities that people are in, so they have to manage a schedule. And how do you handle, tests? How are you handling projects? Stuff like that. So for me, it was like with the juniors and seniors, it was pretty easy to find leaders in juniors and seniors because they already had experience of, going through the first couple semesters. And in the first couple semesters, like that's where a lot of times you get tested.
How many of those? Okay. So this is probably a rabbit trail, but so let's just say you hired 100 leaders in 6 months or wannabe leaders. How many of those people actually turned out to be actual leaders after like a year? Like what's the success rate of
yeah, I mean, you hire people. I mean, it's about a 50% success rate, and then out of those, I mean, all of them are leaders in some capacity. But the ones that are like truly successful, it's about the top 10%.
All right. So out of the 50, 5 of them are like beasts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not bad. So it's a numbers game. It's a pure numbers game.
Right, and that's what I found to be true in most communities.
And you had a budget that you were able to just go out and hire 100 people, right? Like, I mean, somebody just said, hey, like, we're going to do this. Like, cause I mean, that's like a lot of companies, people that are listening right now, there's a lot of small business owners that are listening. They're probably like, I can barely hire one person right now, let alone like 100. So like, yeah, what kind of like, where would that capital come from? Like where did they just straight infuse it?
Well, I mean, it didn't really cost much. I mean, if you really think about it. So if I'm basically going up on a college campus and I'm literally walking into a classroom, this is what I used to do. If the class started at 10 o'clock, I would show up at 9:55. And then at about 9:57, 9:58, about 80% of the class would be in the room. And I would literally just be like, I would get everybody's attention. I'd be like, hey, and then everybody would stop. They would look at me, and I knew right then I had about 20 seconds. So I would give a 20-second elevator pitch. I would have clipboards, and dude, this is in like 2005, 2006, 2007. So I have these clipboards, and there'd probably be a classroom auditorium of about 500 people. And so then I would give my pitch, and then I'd be like, I'm going to sit at the back of the classroom. I'm going to give a clipboard here, 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 and here. Just if you're interested, you want more information, just put down your name, number, or whatever. So then I'd put the clipboards and I'd wait at the back of the class, and then I'd get 100 names and numbers. And then I would just call them all and send them emails. And if people were interested, they'd respond back. And then it's what we called, smile and dial times, where I just call and talk to people. And then I'd set up interviews from there.
And these were commission salespeople, I assume, right?
Commission salespeople, correct.
So there was no here's a salary, here's a vehicle, here's a gas card. It wasn't cushy. It was like, we're going to go knock on some doors.
Correct. Yeah. And these people are also like, it was also selling franchises and stuff like that too. So these were leadership positions that were unpaid. It was running your own business. So, there really was no overhead doing this.
All right. Well, that was my little rabbit trail on how to hire 100 people in 6 months and develop the leaders. You can buy the course later. But tell me, how did that transition into roofing?
Well, what was how that transitioned into roofing? The recruiting we can talk about later, and how we hired the people that we hired. We can talk about that later. But at that point, my older brother was working for a local roofing company. It's probably they were doing 30 to 40 million in Kansas City, and so he said, "Hey, why don't you come learn how to sell roofs?" I'm like, "All right, cool." So I came and I learned roofing. Learned roofing sales. And then once I learned roofing sales, I was like, okay, well, I think I've got what I need to start a roofing business. So I started a roofing business in 2008, Roofing 101. And, started, it was basically me and, a sub crew or two. I was doing all the sales. I was doing all the production management.
That was right in the start of the recession too.
Yeah, totally. We did probably 500, 600,000 the first year. The next year, the second year, we did over $1 million. We consistently did over $1 million.
And you just abandoned the whole college pro thing, said, I want to go start something different.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep. And
why walk away from such a thing that you were building?
Well, because it was all about experience. I knew ultimately the goal was to be an entrepreneur and start my own thing and build a company, build a legacy. And that was the goal from the very beginning, because I knew, I wanted wealth. I wanted to be a millionaire. That was the goal at a young age. And it wasn't necessarily about money. It was about, becoming the man that I would need to be to become wealthy. I was more attracted to that.
That's the second time I've heard that. We're only 30 minutes in. I like it.
Yeah.
I've heard that a couple of times. I've heard that from other people too. Who do you have to become to get what you want?
It's not actually about accomplishing the goal. It's about the adventure along the way, and who you have to become to be able to obtain that. And that's
the journey.
The journey, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean, there's for me now, I'm 40, 41. I'm going to be 42 here in a couple of weeks. It's I want to live. I want a lot of life in my years while I'm here. I want to live a lot of. I want a good life, full of challenges, full of ups and downs, full of good stuff. And there's just going to be some things that get sprinkled in along the way.
So you started that roofing company in 2008 in the middle of the first recession. Our first recession that we've seen in our lifetime, right?
That's right.
We're starting to creep into our second one. They say I don't like the word, but whatever.
Yeah, who knows?
Tell me about that journey then, from 2008 up until just a couple years ago.
Well, it was great, dude. I had this just sense of freedom, I didn't have a boss. I didn't have anybody telling me what to do. I could wake up whenever I wanted. I could work whenever I wanted. I was making, 2 or 3 times the amount of money that I'd ever seen before in my life. And it was just a lot of freedom. I had a lot of fun. And so,
what time did you wake up? You don't strike me as the kind of guy that's going to sleep until 11. So,
well, I never did, but it was, especially when you're in the roofing industry.
You probably worked more than you did for the college pro guys.
Totally. But I wasn't sleeping in all the time. It's just I didn't have things telling me I was the boss.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of freedom in, owning your schedule. And so that was very important to me. And so I had a lot of fun with that, dude. And I got really creative with it. And I was really good. I was really good at managing the crew and just setting things up. And I would go out and sell, and I would take care of the customers and stuff like that. But it's not realistically, when you're running the business well, and it's you and a couple of subs, you don't have to be on the site 24/7. If you're hiring guys that know what they're doing, you don't have to sit there and babysit them. If you're good at sales, you don't have to go do 20 estimates in a week to land the jobs that you need to make the money you need to make. and create wealth. It's just, you don't have to do that. So I had a pretty good balance, was able to do some cool stuff with my family, go on trips and stuff like that.
You're young, man. You were young, 2008, man. I didn't start. You're a year older
28.
than me. Yeah, you're a year older than me. I didn't start my roofing company till 2015. But I was by myself that first year. I had me and I found a crew, and I did $1.3 million by myself. Yeah. That was working.
That was good.
That was working. It was there was no overhead. Then the second year, then I hired like 3 or 4 people, and it started to get interesting. So tell me your journey on the roofing. Like, when did you start hiring people? Like, when did you start like scaling?
2013. 2013, I hired a production manager, and I opened up Omaha.
So 5 years by yourself?
5 years by myself.
Just like working like a madman, just by yourself, just doing selling and project managing. You're doing your own invoicing and accounting and a little bit of marketing and like
all of it.
And you never, and this is after you hired 100 salespeople. So like, tell me why it took 5 years before you decided to like get any help.
I don't even know, dude. I feel like I was just comfortable. I was making money. I was enjoying myself. I was enjoying my freedom. And then I was like, I remember what it was. I was at a conference and Rodney Webb was just like, why are you just being a regular old contractor doing his thing, just selling jobs and, and
you got a job.
He was talking about potential. He's like, you're not living up to your potential. And I was just like, you're right. He actually made me cry. He brought tears to my eyes. And I was like, you're right. What am I doing? And the next year we opened up an office in Omaha. And we did, I think it was like 1.9 million. It was me and a production manager. So this is what the schedule looked like. Dude, I would drive up to Omaha Tuesday morning. And I mean, it's a 2.5 hour drive, so it's no big deal. You just wake up at 6, you're on the job site by 8:30, no big deal. So, I drive up to Omaha Tuesday, then I drive back on Thursday night, and I'd work there for 3 full days. Then I would work in Kansas City Friday, Saturday, and Monday. And that was literally, I did that from the time that storm hit in April. I think it was in April of 2013, all the way through November. And so I'd work in 2 places. I had a production manager in Kansas City that ran everything, and I ran everything up in Omaha. And so together we did 1.9 million. I had like a couple commercial jobs in there mixed in, and it was super cool. Then the next year, storms were hitting in Kansas City. I hired a bunch of sales reps. So I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 guys. And so we ran Omaha and Kansas City, and then we opened up Denver in 2014. And then we ran Omaha, Kansas City, and Denver 2015. And then 2016, shut down Omaha and just ran Kansas City and Denver. And then made the decision to move to California. I was like, you know what, things are going really well. We're doing, 5 million consistently or whatever. And the business is growing. It's, things are really comfortable. And my wife and I were kind of looking at each other like, if we don't move, we're never going to move. This is the place we're going to be. And, it wasn't cool with me. I felt like that there was something else out there.
The weather is so much nicer.
Oh man, totally. And she had, gone to school out here, so she knew all about San Diego. And so I remember it was this phone call that we had. She was out in San Diego on a retreat. I was back at home in Kansas City, and I could hear the joy in her voice. And I was like, I've never heard that joy before. And I said, in just like a split second, I was like, babe, let's move there. And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, let's move. Let's do it. And she's like, okay. And
up until that point, here's what I want you to cap. If you can remember back to that point of when you're getting ready to move before, you scaled too much or whatever, like what was your biggest struggles as a business owner from 2008 to 2013, 14?
Before I scaled?
Yeah, but before you moved to California, like.
Oh, before I moved to California.
Kind of like, yeah, I mean, like, you know, because you're doing 5 million, you know, it's like, what were the biggest challenges? Did you have any adversity that you had to overcome? I mean, was there any struggles? Like, what was the hardest thing that you had overcome up to that point?
The hardest thing I had to overcome was, there was a couple challenges that I struggled with was, letting go of some responsibility. It took me way too long to let go of responsibility.
You a little control freak, are you, little Graham? Yeah,
not anymore.
Not anymore, but back then though, like you didn't want to let it go, right? Like,
dude,
it had to
control. It had to be my way. It had to be done a certain way, and so that really hurt our growth. That really hurt the potential.
Did you lose anybody because of that?
I'm sure I did. I don't know. I don't.
Did you ever lose anybody that you like look back and you're like, man, I should have never lost that person. That was my screw up.
Probably the most painful loss that we had was in 2019. That was after I moved, and we had a general manager, a sales manager, and one of the top reps leave, and I just remember being in my office here, and we have these little chairs that you sit in. It's like an egg, and you can sit in and just take a nap. I sat in that chair for hours and just didn't want to come out because I knew it was like millions of dollars just gone. That was tough to deal with.
Where'd he go?
I started his own company, which was great. You know, fantastic thing, and he's still operating.
You couldn't figure out a way to keep him, or it was just like one of those like you couldn't grow as fast as he needed to grow.
Yeah, I think he was just done with the culture. Our controller at the time too, which was tough. It was a mistake on my end. She didn't want to work for a big company. And we were growing at a pace that she was just like, it was too much for me. I don't want anything to do with this.
She just couldn't keep up with all the accounting and stuff, like and all the.
She could. She's very, very talented, very skillful. Just didn't want to do that amount of work. It was too stressful for her. Mm-hmm. She's like, I don't want to deal with this fast-paced stress. I'm out. And I should have saw that coming along. I should have known that because when we initially started, when I first met her and started working with her, that was her vibe. She was just like, you know, she said it multiple times in just casual conversation. Yeah, I really love working with small businesses.
California, man, people are chill out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me when you decided to because didn't you go like gangbusters and like really scale? Mm-hmm. Like, tell me about like what set that in, and then tell me about the rise, and then tell me about the fall. Quickly, like you don't have to go too deep, but I really want people to understand. Like, I want them to learn some lessons from going too fast, what you learned. Yeah, you know, if you were to do it over again, how would you do it? You know, stuff like that.
Well, I've always had this mentality of, you know, it's curiosity. If I could do this with this, what could I do with this? Like, I wonder what's possible. And so constantly pressing the boundaries physically, you know, with my body, and then also just in business. And so a lot of the same principles apply. And so when we decided to move to California, we're like, okay, well, I need to hire a management team. So we hired a management team to manage the business in Kansas City so that we can move to California. Then once we moved to California, we decided to get the license here and start a branch here. Might as well. I'm here, I can start a business and manage it. And then I've got the location out in Kansas City that's doing well. Let's just do that. Then after working in San Diego for a little bit, I was like, you know what? I actually hired a business coach to work with me to hold me accountable to goals. I don't need direction on what to do. I just need someone to help me stay accountable to goals so I can execute. So I hired one of my old colleagues, Takuya, and we met each other at College Pro way back in the day. We've known each other for, 17 years now. And so he was my coach. After working together for a few months, I was like, Takuya, why don't we partner together and just build a massive company like we did at College Pro? I want to build a national roofing brand. And during that time, I'm here in San Diego, and we rebranded the company to Roofing 101. And also at that time, I'm selling roofs, and people were having their roofs replaced because they're going solar. Just about every person that I was selling a roof to was going solar. And I'm like, there's something to this. Why am I not doing solar? Why? Like, I can forecast the future. This was in 2018, 4 years ago. And I'm like, there is no way that roofing and solar are going to be independent of each other. This makes perfect sense. So we started doing solar in 2018. And then with that, I was like, we need to become a national company. So I want to build a national brand. So I hired a brand coach, the same guy that worked with Nike and Gap. He worked with Nike like decades ago, worked with Gap like back when they were doing their thing. And so with that,
see the guy that made the swoosh, the jump man?
He didn't make the swoosh, but he worked with him. Yeah.
Just kidding. Keep going. That was good.
Yeah. So that was the goal. And I'm like, okay, well, let's do this. And I didn't really know much about, corporations or anything like that, but I knew how to hire people. I knew how to lead people. I knew how to grow at a large scale. And I knew it was going to take some money. And so we just worked incredibly hard, man, between me and Takuya. I was just talking to him today. And we worked incredibly hard to build. We licensed in every state west of the Missouri, got LLCs and things set up, ready to go. So we got some of the legal, bridges taken care of so that when we're ready to pull the trigger, we could just pull the trigger and open and get things rolling. So we got to a point where we were growing, and things were going really well, dude. Like, we were doing great in California. We were doing trial and error, just trying to figure out the roofing and solar thing, which can be tough. Like, you guys out there who are doing roofing and solar now, it was a lot harder. If it's hard now, it's like a lot harder 2 years ago. Because we're basically like trying to figure out how this all works. We're one of the only companies that are doing it in the country. And we're just trying to figure this out. And so, it took money, it took time, and we sacrificed a lot of like success trying.
Did you borrow any friends' money, or did you just use your own money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bank loans, mainly.
Yeah, I need to learn how to do that. I've never done that before. That's why my growth, like I can't understand how people can just like go do that, but I guess they just go get loans, right?
Yeah, you either like the way you
can't just keep reinvesting profits. I mean, like it's a slower grind, right?
You either bring somebody in as a partner and you give up equity, and they bring cash to the table, or you take out loans. So it's you're either giving up equity, taking your own, or using your own money, or using debt, like
gotcha.
Doing it through debt. And so we did most of it through debt, myself. And so, we got to a point where we were scaling and growing, and things were actually working well. And we found the formula, the first quarter of 2020, here in California. It was starting to work really well. And this is actually where we were focused on the most, because it was the most opportunity with roofing and solar. So we had, I think, over 50 employees the first quarter of 2020 before COVID hit. Everything shut down here in California, and people didn't want to work. They took their, government pay or whatever, and when it was time to come back to work, they decided not to come back to work. So the money that we spent on payroll, the money that we spent on hiring and training and all that stuff went out the window. It was a couple $100,000. And so that hole was hard to overcome. Now, then it was like, you can get PPP money, but you can only spend PPP money on what? Payroll, So we're basically like bringing more people in to do the same thing. They would just come in and quit, and just be like, oh, I don't want to work. And then they would go take government money.
So you couldn't motivate them.
Couldn't motivate them. It was tough. I mean, and you deal with percentages. So when you hire 10 people, it's like 1 or 2 people want to really work and they're actually decent at it. So then the other 8.
So would you like classify this whole thing as like just bad timing then?
Bad timing and a few bad decisions. So bad decisions on my part. I wouldn't say like I would do it over again. I would do it over again, but I would do it different. And what I would do different is I would actually work in the business more. Because what happened was, we had a CEO. Takuya was running the business. Austin, we had an executive team. We had a full executive team. We had a full recruiting team. And we had salespeople in all these different locations, a production team, subcontractors. I mean, it was actually pretty well put together. The downside was there weren't a ton of guys that actually knew insurance.
Gotcha.
And so when you're doing insurance work and you're invoicing for insurance, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to.
You don't get all the money.
You don't get all the money. And so we were getting shorted on invoices by the insurance company because we weren't invoicing properly. And so then,
and you, if I remember right, you were out doing Murphs and being business owner, and you probably you probably weren't watching it as quite as close, right?
Well, correct. I wasn't focused on.
You let the control go. You gave the control up, which is almost like a double-edged sword. Like it's like wow.
Yeah, but trust but verify. Trust and verify.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't verify. I trusted, and we coached and we trained and all that kind of stuff. And so people knew what they were doing, but I didn't verify and double check prior to invoices going out. Or I was focused on other things. I was focused on the goal was how can we become a $1 billion roofing and solar company in 10 years? And then I was like, okay, 10 years, huh? Well, how can we change that trajectory to 5 years? And so we literally were, my job was to look at it in a 5-year span. What do we need? If this was to be a $1 billion organization in 5 years, what do we need? We need technology. We need certain platforms. We need systems and processes to be like super tight. So I was actually working on those things rather than looking at the right now. And so that's the number one thing I would
Too visionary.
Too visionary, and the timing of the visionariness of that phase of it was too soon. It like
it's
give
hard.
it one more year, and it would have been good. So
well, if you're listening at home and you're starting a business, the best piece of advice I think that he just gave you is trust. We all want to trust, right? It's all in our hearts most of the time. But the verify piece is key. And that's something I've struggled with as a business owner over the years, because I kind of have those same tendencies, Graham. I think a lot of us do that found companies. But while you were doing all this is one of the coolest stories about Graham is you were training like military style for this Murph thing. Tell everybody at home, because a lot of people probably don't know what the Murph is. Like, just give us a quick overview on why you did that and what it is and what made you proud of that.
Well, I think all business owners have hobbies and things that they do. And so for me, this was a lifestyle. This is a hobby, something that I would do on the side, at night or, in the morning time. So I would physically train. And so I got into extreme endurance events more to change my lifestyle. My wife gave me an ultimatum 7 years ago and said, if you don't change some things, I'm out. And so I had to change some lifestyle choices, some things that I was doing, drinking way too much. And so that was impacting my relationship with my wife. It was impacting my health. And so I had to make some drastic changes and make some choices. So what I decided to do was start to do things with my body that would require me to take care of it. So I actually tried out for a semi-pro football team within a few months. It was like, okay, if I make the team, I have to take care of myself. If I don't take care of myself physically, then you know, I'm going to get hurt. And these are grown men. Like some of these dudes should be playing in the NFL, but they're not. You know, they're like NFL rejects. And so
they still hurt though.
Oh, dude, yeah. Like at 35 years old, if I don't take care of myself and train and get prepared, I will really hurt myself. So I forced myself. I put the pressure on to make changes in my life. And the other thing that I did was I found an organization here in California called SEAL Fit. And what they do is they have all these training programs and these boot camps where, you know, they simulate a Navy SEAL Buds Hell Week.
Wow.
And they do it for civilians. And so it's like 50, 60 hours of no sleep. Have
you ever met Goggins before?
No.
You know David Goggins, the guy that wrote the, yeah.
Yeah, I know
David.
David.
That was a crazy book, man. Crazy book. Keep going, man. This is a good story.
Yeah, so I decided to sign up for those boot camps, went to the first one, got my ass kicked, and decided to go back and do it again. And what was funny, I quit. And what was funny is the night that I got back to Kansas City from San Diego, because I flew out here to do it, got my ass kicked, flew home. I got an email with a picture. I still have the email. And it was a picture of the people that completed it. And it was like 13 dudes or whatever. And they're like, congratulations to all the people that completed. And for those of you that didn't, better luck next time. And I was like, I responded to that email and I said, I'm not okay with quitting. I'll be back. So I signed up for the next one and flew out and trained different, completed it. And since then, I was invited, based on my effort and based how I showed up to that boot camp, I was then invited to work and support the organization. And so these are all retired SEALs and retired special operators that instruct. And so I had the opportunity and the honor to work with these men and basically train men and women that come in all over the world for the next like 7 years. It's about 1,500 hours is what I spent in physical and mental training, either participating, observing, and taking part. So it was pretty invaluable experience. And so radically shifted my life, radically changed my life. I've learned so many different lessons. There will be books written. I mean, I've got all these ideas I write on a daily basis. I've got, I don't know how many notes, how many pages. I've got, let me just pull this up, 4,661 notes over the last couple of years. Yeah, it's insane, dude. I write anytime I get inspired, I just write things down. So
I need to get in a better habit of that. Like, man, I'm inspired like daily, and I never write it down. That's a whole nother discipline in and of itself.
Yeah, do it. And so what happened after those camps? I got invited to go on this excursion, this mission, and so it was called Sparta 300. And what we did was we went to Greece and we retraced the steps of King Leonidas and the 300 Spartans. And if you ever...
Yeah, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, dude.
I watched that movie a bunch of times.
So it's funny about the movie, dude. When we were there, we're like, oh, they make it look so easy. They just grab their shields and their stuff, and then they walk. And
those shields probably weigh 50 pounds too.
It takes them 30 seconds to get to Thermopylae. Well, it's 235 miles. So we were the first group.
Movie magic.
Yeah. We were the first group to retrace the steps of King Leonidas and the 300 Spartans. And so that was a very, that was a story for another time, but that was a very impactful trip. I made a lot of connections with the athletes there. I met James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy. He was actually my endurance trainer. He came with me and we were roommates during that time. So that forged a relationship with James. And then from there, that opened up my eyes to, extreme endurance. And I was like, because that was my very first marathon. My very first marathon was, 235 miles. The furthest distance that I'd gone prior to that was 13 miles. And so I knew, it's like, well, if I'm going to do something of this magnitude, I need the craziest trainer that's done something that nobody else has ever done.
Do you got any video recordings from that? Are they going to come out with the Graham Desert documentary one day, and like we're going to see some of that?
Yeah, I'd actually like to do it again.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it's pretty epic.
So tell me about the Murph. What exactly is the Murph? I know it's like a series of like running and push-ups and pull-ups, right? And all kinds of stuff, right?
Well, it's a hero WOD, and a hero WOD in the CrossFit world is basically, it's a workout made in the honor of, a first responder or somebody in the police force, a firefighter, or someone in the military that died in the line of duty. Okay. So this one was made in honor of Lieutenant Michael Murphy, who was a SEAL at the time. And he was killed in action out in Afghanistan. And they made the movie Lone Survivor. I'm sure you've seen that or heard that. Yeah. So Lieutenant Michael Murphy was the one that went out to get the comm signal out in the mountains during a firefight. Basically, he wanted to get a comm signal to call in, help to get his team out. He knew he was compromising his life doing it, but he wanted to save his team. So he went out, did that. They sent a chopper, and obviously he died in that process and was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. So they made a workout in his honor. It's a 1 mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and a mile run wearing a 20-pound vest. And I've done a Murph plenty of times, the Murph challenge is done every Memorial Day. Hundreds of thousands of people worldwide do the Murph challenge. How
long does it take you to do a Murph? Like, I didn't do all the math on all that stuff, but like, what's it usually take a guy like you to do that? On average,
45 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it's not like it's like a 3 hour, it's 45 minutes, but obviously you got to train to be able to even complete it, I'm sure. I mean, and then let's tell them about the crazy thing that you ended up doing. you did one every day, right?
I did one every day for a year.
Why?
I wanted more discipline in my life. And this was, the idea first came across my plate. My business partner called me one day and he's like, "Hey, what do you think about doing a Murph every day for a year?" And I was like, "Oh, that sounds absolutely terrible. But at the same time, that sounds awesome."
Yeah, I know.
You're like speaking to my soul, man. And I didn't think he was serious. And so I wrote it down. I was like, Murph 365. Okay, cool. And so, at the end of the year, you do a vision. You take a look at your goals. How did I do? I'm going to create a vision for the next coming year. I'm going to create some goals for the next coming year. So I put it down on my vision card, December of 2019. Then January 1st comes around. And it's like New Year's. Everybody always like, New Year's resolution. I'm going to look at my goals again. So I looked at my goals again. I'm like, I haven't taken action on Murph 365. So I bought the domain Murph 365 on January 1st, 2020. Then I started working with Tim Grover. Tim Grover is the coach.
Relentless.
Relentless. Wrote the book Relentless, wrote the book Winning. He coached Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, some other, big name athletes, Dwayne Wade, Michael Phelps, some of the best athletes in the world. And I was like, you know what? I want to work with Tim Grover. So I became part of one of his mastermind groups. There's about a dozen of us in the group. We would meet every week for about 8 weeks. And there was a time where he challenged the group and he's like, "Hey, you guys, let me tell you about procrastination." And he started going on about procrastination. And I started thinking about things that I'm procrastinating on my goal board. And I'm like, Murph 365 is one of them. So at that moment, I had bought the vest. I got on Amazon or got on the website, bought the vest. It came in on a Friday, and that next Saturday, I started Murph 365 and just did a Murph every day for a year.
What was the worst day? What was the worst day out of that 365-day journey? Were you ever sick? Did you ever just like, were you like, I don't know, give me like the worst day. Uh-huh. How'd you get through it?
Worst day is when I had COVID.
Oh, so you ended up getting COVID during that whole thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did it take? It didn't take you 45 minutes that day to do it, probably, did it?
No, dude, like an hour and a half. It was absolutely.
So as long as you got it done, at least in some point during that 24 hours, it still counted, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely terrible.
Are you like a world record holder for that? Like, do they even have a world record? Like, they never had it, right? Like, you created it, right?
Yeah. So I was the first guy to do it. There's been 3 people that followed, like, right away.
So they probably, and a couple of those guys, just to probably be jagoffs, probably did 366, 367, right?
Oh, I did 366.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a guy who's like on day 500 or something.
Yeah, overachievers.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
so tell me about this Tim Grover thing. Hold on 1 second, because I don't want to forget, because I have ADHD. Cooler, closer, cleaner. Is that what it goes?
Yeah, cooler, closer, cleaner.
Cooler, closer, cleaner. What are you?
Oh, definitely a cleaner. Done. Next. Yeah.
Have you always been a cleaner?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I listened to that book, probably Relentless. I've probably listened to it 9 or 10 times.
So good. If you guys haven't read that book, listen. That book, I mean, that book will get you fired up. That book will, if most people operate at 20, 30%. That book will at least get you up to 60. Hopefully, like that book will get you moving if you're inspired by stuff like that, because it's Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant's, their mentality, man, like that's next level. Like they all say LeBron, like LeBron, I have nothing close to that mentality of what it's like to be a cleaner. So,
totally.
Let's wrap this show up. Let's get back to the whole, because I mean that whole fitness thing, man. You've been through a lot, so you've been able to get through that, and then. After I met you and heard this amazing roofing story, you came out public. You told everybody about your bank. You were super vulnerable on Facebook about the bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. How did that affect you? How did that affect your family? What kind of, like, I know there's always haters, right? There's haters, there's supporters. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
It's devastating. It really is. Roofing 101 is something that I created, out of blood, sweat, and tears. It's literally, I tried to explain it to somebody. I created it. I built it. I created the identity of that company. And it's almost like a child. And so when something like that just dies or fails, it's devastating, dude. It really is. It's like a piece of you literally just died off. And so I really had to, there was a lot going on personally, but I had to look myself in the mirror and really figure out who I am, and it was tough. It was very tough. I felt shame, felt guilt, like I let a lot of people down. From my personal family to, my wife, my kids, I basically had to cash out all these investments. I had to sell real estate to pour money into the business to make payroll multiple times. So it got to the point where there's like zero assets and there's like no other option. You're looking around and it's like, yeah, we maybe might be able to salvage it. But, it's over $3 million in debt, like what are you going to do? You can't. And at that time, it's like you have employees that are leaving because they quote unquote see the writing on the wall. But it's like, man, I mean, you could potentially have a shot at turning it around if you guys would just stick it out with us. And some people didn't want to stick it out, understandable. So it was this domino thing. And it was very difficult to go through. Personally, and probably the most difficult part was excuse me, I'm like getting emotional, but it's
all right, man.
Led my wife down.
Yeah.
You know,
and your kids
led my wife down, and my kids, and just the things that they have to go through within the last year has been tough, dude. Like there's certain things that we can't do as a family. You know, I haven't been back home to see my family. And it's financial, you know, that's not easy to deal with. But you know, it's a good lesson to learn. You know, there's a lot of good things that are coming out of it. It's actually strengthened my relationship with my wife. It's strengthened my, my resolve. I mean, all the different things that I've gone through. I would say my family, my wife and I have gone through so many different challenges. Statistically speaking, you would look at it and be like, man, you guys should have been divorced like 6 times. You know, the things that you've gone through together. Most people just divorce. Like most women would just walk out the door and just be like, the hell with this. You know, I need something more secure. But that's not the case. You know, I have a woman that stands behind me. You know, we were just talking about it last night. I mean, there's lessons that are coming out of this, and we're both learning things that are important that we know that God wants to take us through. And so I don't doubt like where the future is and where we're going and the trajectory of, you know, our family and what we're doing together. I see it with certainty. I know where we are and where we're going. And it's actually, it's pretty refreshing, quite frankly. But
it's like a fresh start, man.
Yeah.
Clean slate, fresh start. You got to do it all over again. And so what are you going to do? Like, what are you doing right now?
Well, great question. So, you know, I've had a lot of time to think about, like, I'm like, man, what am I really good at? What can I get paid doing? What am I passionate about? And what does the world need more of? And so, I've gone through a bunch of different exercises trying to figure that out. And, you know, God's blessed me with the ability to lead people and to create leaders. And God's blessed me with an amazing, you know, physical body that has accomplished some things. And so it's been on my heart for the last few years to develop a leadership training program and platform. And so that's what I've been working on the last few months, and finally got the website done. Got the website together, got all the programs written, and the first course is called The Leader's DNA. Launches September 20th of 2022. And we're actually doing like a pre-launch sale to get that moving, which is great. So that's like the first of many courses that will be coming out over the next 6 months.
Is that like a video course, or do they like do it live, like on Zoom, or do you do it in person? Like what's?
It's going to be both. So we've got, ideally what I would like to do is I would like to do a lot of this live, you know? So I will. You
got great energy. You have great energy. You got to be, you got to meet Graham. You got to be in front of Graham.
Yeah. So I can do live trainings and things like that, but it's all starting through video, through workbooks, workshops, stuff like that. That's how it's starting. Yeah. Are
you doing anything now to make money? Like, how are you making ends meet? Like, what are you out? Like, what are you doing? I saw you were doing something. I thought you were are you slinging solar?
Yeah, dude, I was slinging solar.
There's nothing wrong with. Listen,
dude.
If you didn't do that, I would have been disappointed in you. Listen, I've been following you, man. I remember telling Brittany, I was like, "You remember Graham from?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, and I told her your story. I was like, "She's like, oh, what's he doing?" I said, "You know what? He's grinding again. He's back in the trenches. He's doing whatever he's got to do to support his family. Like he is like just, and he's he's humble." Let me ask you this question, and I want to put this on the record because 10 years from now, we're going to make this clip, you know, Gary Vee style, where we say something now and then 10 years. Why is someone going to buy a leadership course of a failed, bankrupt business owner?
Why wouldn't they? I mean, I had one guy literally a couple weeks ago. He's like, I'm going to buy from you because you're bankrupt, because you went bankrupt. Like, not only do I want to know like what it took for you to go that far in debt. Like, he's like, it takes somebody really smart to get $3.5 million in debt. Like, you got to be smart to figure that out. So he was like, number one, I want to learn from your mistakes because I want to go down the same path, but I want to learn from your mistakes. So I'm going to hire you because of that. And then two, you're not going to find anybody with a unique experience like I have. I've got, dude, the amount of experience I have in franchising, hiring people, systems, processes, mixed with the 1,500 hours with SEALs and special ops, mixed with physical fitness, mixed with just all the family, the dynamic that I have personally with my kids. There's not anybody, and I sat down and I thought about this. I'm like, this is a very unique ability. This is a unique thing. There's nobody on the planet that has this same experience. It's not going to happen the same way twice.
Your wife's got to come out with how to be an awesome wife course. Okay. To entrepreneur husbands that like need support because it's a lonely world out there, bro.
Oh, dude, it's coming.
So she needs to do that. And then kids, then you can also do the course on how to tell your kids when you fail and like how to overcome that, because that's got to be, I couldn't even imagine that conversation of like, hey kids, we can't go on vacation this year because we can't go on vacation. And all you guys need to go get that paper route job like I had when I was in high school. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And dude, I got to tell you, my wife and I are not concerned about finances. It's been the craziest thing. It's just been miracle after miracle after miracle. Yes, of course, I sling solar. Yes, of course, I've made some commissions doing that. But it's like I've literally I've had people just give gifts. Literally, I had somebody give my wife an $11,000 check and just said, hey, this is a gift. You don't need to pay me back. I know this is for you. I see your family. I see what you're doing. And, this person had no idea what was going on professionally. They just were following their heart. And, that type of thing, that's happened twice. And then there's other things where like I found a retirement plan that is protected. I was like $80,000 in this retirement plan. And so we lived off that for a while,
Man, God bless you, man. That's
you know what I mean? Like finding, literally looking under rocks, like looking for stuff.
Yeah. Well, back in the old days, we tried to like find change in our seat cushions. Nowadays, that won't pay the bills. So like,
Yeah.
Well, listen, Graham, I really appreciate this. I appreciate you being vulnerable. I appreciate you telling your story. I feel like it's going to help a lot of people. Mm-hmm. There's 5 questions I ask every single guest, rapid fire. So pretend you're on an island completely by yourself. Yep. You're by yourself. What book are you taking with you?
The Bible.
All right. And then what restaurant are you going to put on that island? What's your favorite place? Where's your favorite place to eat at?
Oh, Woody's Cafe.
Woody's Cafe.
Yeah, it's in Pacific Beach.
All right. And then what's your favorite movie? What movie are you taking with you?
Oh, shoot. And I'd have to watch it over and over and over again, huh?
Probably, yeah.
Oh. Could it be a trilogy?
Sure, the first one.
I'd just say Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then you're allowed to take one vacation. You can go anywhere you want. Where are you going?
Oh, shoot. Where would I go?
Because you've been some cool places, sounds like.
Okay, so I don't know if it would be one place, but I'd be gone for a month. And I would go, and I would, I'd go through like Europe and the Middle East.
All right. Do like a little Jesus track maybe through the Middle East or something. All
yeah,
right.
through Europe.
And then you're allowed to spend the day with one person. It could be past, present, or future. You got all day. You got 24 hours with them. Who are you spending it with?
King Solomon.
King Solomon.
Yeah, the guy who wrote Proverbs.
Yeah. Tell me why.
Yeah. Wisdom, dude. That dude's got more wisdom than anybody on the planet. Money comes from wisdom.
How do people get this course, man? Because I'm going to publish this podcast probably right before it comes out.
Leagueofleaders.com.
Legal?
The website. League
of Leaders. Okay.
League, yeah. LEAGUE of leaders.com. Yep.
Wow.
And it's something, listen, I'm going to have, there's multiple courses that are coming out over the course of the next 6 months. And so you can become a member or you can just buy single courses. Totally up to you. It's a lot better to be a member. There's more benefits. So
sweet, man. Well, listen, you're on Facebook and Instagram, right?
Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
How do they find you on Instagram?
Just Graham Desert. That's it. At Graham Desert.
Spelled like dessert, just so you guys know.
Like
if you're listening at home, you can't see any of the stuff in the links yet. It's dessert. Because he's tasty, baby. He's tasty. Well, listen, I appreciate you, man. I hope I run into you. When next time I'm in Southern California, which seems like to be quite often, I feel like there's always a roofing, like GAF, like has Wealth Builder out there. There's NFT LA out there. Like I'm definitely going to hit you up next time I come out there. So spend some time with you.
Do it,
all right. Well, we'll be back next Friday with another episode of the Big Fish Cares podcast. Thanks and have a great week, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.